we were in a studio, the red on-air light would be on, right? So I was telling Burt before you got here, Chris, that when I did the Inosanto birthday book, I didn't expect it to be anything other than just a collection of stories, right? And then the thing took on a life of its own and ended up being, you know, what it was. Anyhow, so everybody say hello to Chris Kent and Burt Richardson. This is the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues episode number 123, a special JKD Townhall. When I had the idea for this, the country was a different country, and town halls were things that were happening. And now we are in this situation in which we find ourselves. So I wanted to start there. I just, like 20 minutes ago, somebody asked me this question online. And so I want your take on it, and then I'll have you guys make your statements, right? But how has the quarantine, okay, let's do this first. What challenges has quarantine created for you, and how are you dealing with them?
Let Chris go first.
So Chris,
he's my senior.
Yeah, let Chris go. Okay. Yeah, because he's senior.
Oh, good. So I get to step in it right away. Well, you know, I live up here in Boise, and there's not as many people, so there's not that much of a quarantine. It's basically a stay-at-home request. I go to the park every day. You know, I use discernment. I exercise judgment. I go to the market. I go to my school. I don't have classes, but I go in and I shoot. I've got a group of guys, and we shoot these little, whatever, 1 to 5 minute videos. That so far I think I've dropped about 120 on my school page. Just training notes that they can use on JKD and Macaulay and training methodology. But dudes, I mean, I go out. I don't wear a mask. I don't wear gloves. I'm always amazed when I see people driving in their cars with gloves and masks on, because that makes a lot of sense to me. But you know, that's just, again, it's my take on it. I respect what everybody's doing, but you know, that's it. I'm going to live my life. So.
Yeah. Mr. Richardson, it's a little bit different for you, isn't it?
A little bit different out here. We are locked down quite a bit. Interesting here is that the lockdown, they said, okay, we're locking people down. You can work from home and this and that. But then there was this giant list of people who were exempt. You know, like liquor stores and all kinds of certain. It's funny because at the end it actually said specifically certain union workers don't have to abide by this thing, and you know, our government over here is very interesting. But for me personally, I actually stopped my classes before there was a mandate to stay at home, because I could just feel as this thing was coming up, and you know, I have this. I mean, anybody can do it. I happen to have a science background, so I was reading some of the literature, the scientific literature. I'm like, wow, this is a viral outbreak. I just couldn't risk having someone go to class, get it, go home, and then give it to grandma or something. So so it's been interesting not teaching classes for 6 straight weeks, and I miss my students tremendously, just that interaction. But you know, we're JKD, we're fighters. You're in a bad position, you make the best of it, right? That's what we do. So So
listen.
I mean, you know, I don't. My school. No, I was just going to say, my school is not open. The people that come in to shoot my videos are a select group. We all know each other. We don't go anywhere else. So it's not open to the public. I don't teach. You know, it's just these guys, they want to do these videos with me, and that's it. But yeah, I understand, and I agree with that. I'm not going to have somebody come in who I don't know, or somebody come in who's been places I don't know. So again, I agree with Burt on that. Again, it's just, there's discernment and judgment, and then there's panic and paranoia. And
Yes.
and I think, you know, and honestly, I think the media, I blame the media for so much of this material, as opposed to, you know, instead of printing the facts or the science behind it, as Burt says, it's, you know, what's the motto of the journalistic trade? If it bleeds, it leads. So we're not going to put the number of people that have recovered from this. We're going to put the number of people that died, because that's what people, you know, really want to hear. You know, I mean, my mother's 90. She lives with us. I'm not going to risk going out and getting something and bringing it home. You know. But
yeah. Hey, let me ask you something. Do you?
You know,
do you think that's what people want to hear, or do you think that people have been led into wanting to hear that?
Well, I'll give that to Burt first. You know, go ahead, Burt. And then...
Well, I don't know. Yeah, someone asked toward the beginning. I was in a little conversation, said, you know, we should. It was like conspiracy theory, which I don't believe there's a conspiracy, but they said, you know, we have to look who's making money off this. Who's making money? And I said, well, the one industry for sure is the news companies, because they're running this all day.
Right.
People are watching. I actually would watch news things, and I never watch the news at all. And you know, yeah, their goal is to get viewers. And this is just a little aside here. This is what I don't like about the news. They are often kind of high and mighty, yet the reason they will say anything is to pull you in, so they have bigger numbers and they can sell more ads, or sell ads for higher price. That's the business model. The more people get to watch, the more we can charge for ads, and that's why they do it. So but I'm not really wild about the news.
Well, again, I agree. That's exactly what I agree with 100%. You know, if you ever listen to the Ego song, Dirty Laundry, you know, it's all about that. You know, the bubble-headed bleep bomb comes on at 5, got the plane crash with a gleam in her eye. It's all about numbers. It's all about selling advertising. And the thing that actually turned me on most to that was, if you guys, I'm sure you guys probably remember Gavin De Becker, who wrote the book, The Gift of Fear, right? We actually wrote 3 of them. And the third book he wrote is Fearless. And it was dealing with, when we were dealing with the terrorism and all of that, but there's a huge section in there on the media and the lines that they will use on the news. And I read that, and then I watched the news that night, and they used every single one of the lines. You know, he points out, for example, a developing story means they don't have a story. Okay?
Right.
It means they're grabbing
good
stuff.
point.
And possible links between means they have no idea what they're talking about. The rule is no dead air.
Right.
So we'll bring on 10 people to talk about one item, you know? So yeah,
and they have to be first. Regardless of whether they know what's actually the facts, let's just be first, and then if we're wrong, we won't, you know, people will forget.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It reminds me of a Holly Hunter movie called Broadcast News, where remember, right? Where she says, you know, one White House reporter will hear a theory from a second White House reporter and then call that White House sources.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So we're not going to make this whole thing about COVID. Right. So in prepping for this conversation, here's what I realized. You are both former California residents, both married with one child, a daughter, both prolific authors and video instructors, both have a physical location for classes, but both also travel to teach, right?
Well,
Very
Okay.
observant.
Yeah, okay. So now, Chris, in recent times, you have put out over 100 videos, right?
For my students at my school.
Yes. So I don't know where to see them. Now, right. Now dig this, see? Dig this. This is the beauty of JKD. Burt put out about 5 videos as promos for the new course. Right?
Right.
I put out about 15 videos and did nothing with them. Right? But I didn't put them out just for my students, even though they're shot for my students, I put them out on social media.
Right.
Right? That to me epitomizes JKD. 3 people, similar backgrounds, one common interest, and everybody uses a different approach.
Well, I'd have to add here that my excuse-itis is that I don't know technology, you know? And I'm like, look, I know the stuff. I'm like the actor. Tell me what time to turn up on the set and where to stand, and I will know my lines. But you start talking about the technology behind the stuff, and
I know.
am totally lost.
I know. I tried to help you a little bit with that.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I do have one student when we did the YouTube ones who has that kind of background. I just don't. And honestly, it's not that I don't want to do it. It's just I just don't have the energy to learn all of that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So great. There are technology people. You know, my daughter's a photographer. She's a budding cinematographer. That's great. I just don't know the technology behind it. So.
Well, then, you know, my younger kids say, find somebody who wants to help you with it and pass it off to them.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You know?
I mean, I tell my daughter, she's a technology native. I'm a technology immigrant.
Yeah, right? See, now Burt is the technology wizard. He just gets in front of the camera, and the next thing you know, there's 50-something videos on Spotify, not Spotify, on Shopify.
And they're damn good too. That's the thing. That's the because there's a lot of shit out there. You know? I'm just being honest here because I have some of Burt's material. You sent me the Battlefield Collie. It's damn good.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Say on the technology, when it comes to the technology, it's Sarah is the IT. She really knows these things inside and out. I can stand in front of the camera and do a boop, and I can edit, and then off to Sarah, and it magically ends up placed.
Right.
There you go.
Wait. Chris, what's your daughter's name?
Sarah.
Yeah.
God damn, how did I miss that? Jesus. I missed that one.
Well, you just dropped 5 points on my scale for not.
I know. God damn, no more cool points. God damn it.
Shoddy work.
Yeah. You thought you had it all.
Okay, wait. But it's Sarah Lilani.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, am I back up?
Yep.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Because her auntie Honey from Waimanalo was Papa Ernie. That's her grandfather. His sister, and she lived in Waimanalo. And by tradition, it was we ask a relative. So we asked Auntie Honey to choose a middle name when Sarah was born, and she thought about it for a couple of days, and because she's got Hokulani and Noelani, a lot of her cousins, and Auntie came back and she said, no, I think she should be Ilani. So, yep.
That's beautiful.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, since we have the political thing, the town hall thing, let's do this. Mr. Kent, why don't you make your statement on the state of Jeet Kune Do? You go first.
Okay, wow. Well, you know, I wrote that article a while ago that, and it was actually before Burt and I connected last year at Talkie's thing, and that was that I believe that it's Jeet Kune Do is in the midst of a huge identity crisis, and then I listed out a number of the reasons why I felt that this, or how and why this crisis came about. And then we discussed, when I was in Seattle, Burt and I, we were almost on similar wavelengths, I think, in terms of that we felt that it needed to be reasserted back to its place in the pantheon, if you will, of martial arts. And that's not like, oh, it's better than everything else. I just felt that, you know, it had been in, or it's in the midst of this identity crisis, and that it always held, or a very special place in the martial art world, and that it kind of needed to be, or I feel it needs to be put back to that position. I believe it's been allowed to just denigrate a lot, and that's basically it. You know? I mean, we can go through all of the different reasons and why, but
yeah,
that's the prime thing that I think, and I think it's been for a number of years. I mean, dudes, you know, this June is my 47th anniversary in this friggin' art, and
wow.
So it's not my first barbecue, you know. So I have seen it come in these waves, so many different points through the years, and now I just think it's like I said, it's initially had a very clear sense of identity and a very clear sense of purpose, and I think that has become very much nebulized or nebulous now.
Okay. All right. Your take on this, Mr. Richardson.
Well, believe it or not, I agree exactly with what Chris is saying. My way of saying it, what I tell people is, because he's talking about identity. What is it? You know, what's the identity here? When I first went to the Kali Academy, and Chris was already, he's probably an instructor at that time already, but you know, that was a fighting gym. You went there to learn how to fight. You learned a lot of techniques and how to do this better and all, but they were all learning how to fight. And it just seems to me that there are a lot of people that now teach it as a museum piece, and they're analyzing it, and it's this and that, but it's, you know, this amazing automobile, and let's look at it and put a rope around it, and we'll have to know every single piece and what that's called and this called and all, instead of saying, hey, let's get in that car and let's drive it and see what it'll do. And that's where I think if we can get JKD back to its fighting art roots, I think that is the actual that's the identity, because that's why it was attractive to me as a young man who had lived in a interesting area and had really bad things happen growing up. And that's just my point. And I think that's why MMA is popular, Jiu-Jitsu and a lot of the Muay Thai. They actually fight, and there's actually, they find out, oh, this works. But JKD is such incredible technology for fighting if you train to actually fight in a safe way. That's my point of view.
Okay.
I agree too with that.
So as we do this, who are we trying to attract?
Again, I think you have all of these different groups of people. You have, there's been so many generations of new people coming into the art in terms of, so you have brand new people who are coming into the art or into the realm of the art who have no idea about it or are interested in learning about it. you have people that have been in it for a period of time and they've either become kind of disenchanted with it. And the same with instructors, you know, that they've been in it for a period of time. You have all of these different groups of people. You have the people who are, whatever you want to call them, Bruce Lee aficionados, Bruce Lee fans, which I still feel holds a valid, point as well.
Yeah.
I think you have all of these different groups, and each may have similar things, but then they also have very different things that they want to get out of it,
Right.
So I don't know, it's people used to say that, and I kind of fell in that line for a while. It's like it's a lifestyle, and my perception on it's changed. It's like, to me, it's not a lifestyle, but people who are attracted to a particular way of living or way of thinking, they're the ones that are attracted to it.
Yeah.
That's just my take on it. That, in the same way that, there are a lot of people wear Harley Davidson jackets and they have Harley Davidson tattoos on their arm, but they don't ride a Harley Davidson. They've never ridden a Harley Davidson. And honestly, I know people that have the JKD logo on their arm that don't train. But
Right.
there's something about it. I had a student, he had Bruce's image on one arm and he had the JKD logo on the other arm. So I think there's just different groups of people.
You mentioned generations, right? So
yeah,
in fielding some of the questions for this dialogue, it occurred to me that some of the questions that people wanted me to ask you, for example, they could get the answer if they just did this. You see?
Yeah, maybe some of the technical.
Some of the answers could be found in here. Yeah. Some of the answers could be found in any of the books that are out there. So Absolutely. do you think it's a generational thing? Because we've got you 47 years, right? And Burt, I couldn't remember if you started in 79 or 82. Which one was it?
I actually started my training in 79 with somebody who was a student, and then I started at the academy in 1980.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So 47 years, 40 years. So there has to be some underlying aspect to this, which if we can tap into that underlying aspect, that commonality, we can then spread it out to the different generations, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's that possibility, when you held up that book, I think it's a really important point regarding the time, like when that book was written, because at that time there was myself, there was and Tim Tackett, there was Larry Herzl, there was Dan and everybody at the school, and the idea was to bring out knowledge but not step on each other's toes. So that if I brought out a book on Jeet Kune Do and Tim Tackett brought out a book and Larry Herzl brought out a book, then you'd have conflicting things. So hence, like the kickboxing book, the idea was, look, Tim and I will write about that aspect, and then Larry can write about the grappling aspect of it.
Right.
And that way, people could get different books, but we wouldn't be stepping on each other's toes.
Right.
And so that's when the idea came
something
along.
there. If you actually look in that book, at the beginning it says they're covering the different ways of attack, and when they say, I think it's in the index or somewhere, it's going over the different ways of attack, and it says trapping, grappling, range. See Larry Hartzell's book for that, and all. I mean, it's actually in that kickboxing book. And the other, one more thing I'd like to say about the kickboxing book is that if you read, I don't know, it may be the introduction or very, very early on, it talks about the training progression of learning the technique and your drilling and this and that, and then the sparring is the crucible. I'm sure you use the word crucible. The crucible to test it out and see what you can do, and that's what I think has really gone to the wayside. Is you're asking Dwight was asking about who are we targeting. I'll give you a little of my experience from jiu-jitsu. You know, it was such a hardcore thing. It's still hardcore. If you're going to be, you know, I know Chris trains jiu-jitsu, and when you do this, it really is tough on you, and it's a hard road. If you have a great instructor, it can be easier. But it's still, you have to grind, and you have to go through a lot. So my point being that if you look at a jiu-jitsu school, you cannot say it's a certain group, because you have people from all walks of life are doing this. And a great example, and this is JKD and JKD Unlimited, all the things I was doing. I have one student in particular, Cindy Watanabe. Cindy, when she first came to my class the first night in '98, she comes in, she's in her mid-30s, she's maybe 100 pounds, very slight frame, very soft-spoken, and I remember thinking to myself, which I shouldn't have, but I did, I just thought, oh, this is not for her. It's not for her. Well, Cindy is still with me. She is besides JKD Unlimited and the whole thing, she's actually a black belt in jiu-jitsu. When she travels around the world, she actually goes to jiu-jitsu schools, just walks right in and takes classes and all. You know, was a school teacher. So anyway, the point being, you know, I think it's just sort of a mindset. It can be open to anybody, but again, I think a lot of time, I think people sometimes soften it and go, oh, let's not do that part of it because we're going to run students away. But I think actually, if we do it correctly and you spar intelligently, and Chris is a great example of doing things very intelligently. The training is very intelligent. Then you can bring anybody in and bring them along a little at a time.
Yeah. See, if you saw me rummaging, I was going through the two of these because I was trying to find, I think it's somewhere in there, Chris, as the author or co-author, you might know. Is it in one of those books where it says Jeet Kune Do is not for the masses?
I think so. I tell you the truth, I don't know, it's been so long since I've actually looked at them. I think the term, though, is it's not a mass art. Not that it's not for the masses, because that's why I wrote an article a while later.
Right.
I think it has something to offer everyone, but I don't think it's the art for everyone. And it's not, it's not a mass art when you productionize it, if you will. Like I said, you tear the heart and soul out of it.
Right. Yeah. But see, that's interesting.
Bruce Lee said,
that's interesting because we're all human beings. Like we said earlier, the three of us have the same background, but we're not the same.
That's JKD, man.
Right.
That's what it's supposed to be.
So that's definitely something that we can pass on. I'll use the phrase to the masses, because nobody out there is aiming to be just like somebody else, right?
You know what? I used to think that, but I'm not sure. Because for years I've heard people come at different JKD people, and they'll say, well, like if you're doing a finger jab and a side kick, then you're just mimicking Bruce Lee. You're not being yourself. Then that same person will turn around and they will do another art that is being taught, even by Sifu Dan, and they'll look identical. And yet they don't cross that analogy over to that, because that's what I would say. I'd say, so if I do a finger jab and a shin kick, it's not that you don't consider that's economical motion or economical expression. You consider that I'm mimicking Bruce Lee. Yeah, you'll turn around and for want of a better term, you'll mimic exactly what Sifu Dan is doing, and yet that's kind of like self-expression. I don't get it,
Okay. Yeah. All right. Mr. Richardson, you've been deferring to your senior too much.
Yeah.
No. I want him to go first whenever he wants to. On on that.
Wait, sorry, can I interrupt just a sec, please? Okay,
please.
Look, I'm going to say this once, Dwight, okay? Because Burt and I, we've kind of gone back and forth against this. I am Burt Sr. in terms of the years at which I started in the arts, okay? But I consider Burt every part my equal in everything to do with Jeet Kune Do. So, you know, please understand, you know, when you keep saying senior this, senior that, that's very classical, Dwight. Why are you being so classical? You know, we are level on everything, man. Okay.
Well, thank you for that. You know, but it's, you know, it's true. This is going back to that idea of a fighter thing. You know, when you go into if you're in a fighting gym mentality or just that environment, there isn't all the deference and like this and I better not say anything. If somebody shows a technique and you think it's no good, you go, what is that? Wait, no, I don't think so. Here, try it on me. It's so science, because someone in an actual fighting gym, and we're going to use MMA right now, even though it's not self-defense as far as you know, the targets, you can't go to the eyes or the groin and etc., knives and pistols and such, but they fight. And you know, that person is going to go in the cage, all he or she cares about is performing well and not getting their face smashed in. So anything that can help is encouraged, and then it's analyzed, and not analyzed just by looking at it from your own perspective, but hey, let's actually try it out and see if one, are people getting good results, and two, can I actually get the same good result with my attributes and background? But I think that's Bruce Lee was a fighter. I mean, he got into fights, he had that Wong Jackman thing, and then later in LA, he decided to put on the gear and just go all out, and that's when he really understood a lot of things. In his words, that he had a lot of prejudices that turns out were not right. So I just want to, you know, this is a fighting art to me, and that's why when Chris and I get together, we talk and we have discussions, and if he thinks I'm wrong about something, he says so, and I'm totally open for him to say it, and likewise I can say things, you know, this guy, so many people in his position would just not, you know, I don't need to look at anything else, that's it, I'm done, I need nothing,
right.
Need to look at nothing else, but he's JKD, so that's why we're always improving. So I just want to point out again, JKD, if it's a fighting art, if it's a fighting environment, you go and you actually try things out, and you welcome differences of opinions. You don't have to clash on it, but in the end, the thing is, well, okay, don't tell me, show me.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Chris, you would say that in the backyard and then into the Kali Academy, that was the approach. Don't tell me, show me, let's try it out, right?
Yeah, well, again, you know, you've got to remember that the Chinatown group of students, and then a lot of those transferred obviously into Dan's backyard when Bruce closed down the school, were all black belts in other arts. A lot of them were Ed Parker black belts. So, you know, at that time when you were a black belt under Ed Parker, you fought, be it Kempo, but you fought. So when they came in and they're working with Bruce, okay, they're willing to glove up, they're willing to duke it out, be at little different levels. And part of that is the times have changed in that back then, when I began training in the backyard and even the Kali Academy, I would never, ever, I could never dream of suing my instructor or my school. Even if I got my leg broken, I got my nose broken. And you didn't have to even think about that, you know?
Yeah.
You go home, you know, I'm just, again, like Burt and I are sparring here, bang, he gives me a busted lip. I'm going to say, thanks for working me out. I'm not going to, you know, that was the mentality of the time. It wasn't a stupid mentality because Dan came in and he had a coaching background. But as Burt was saying, yes, it was about, yeah, let's take it out on that was the big thing. Let's take it out on the floor and see. Be it Richard Bustillo, that was Richard's big one. Okay, that's great. Let's glove up. Let's take it out on the floor and see.
Yeah. Hey,
but you didn't have, people did not have to worry about getting sued.
That's right.
right. Yeah. You just mentioned Bustillo and David Giomi, right? Who I think is a student of yours, Bert. He asked a question about, I think it's him. I could be wrong. No, it's a guy named Larry Peck. He wanted to know, other than Inosanto, if there was somebody else that had a profound influence on either of you. So it's actually a question for both of you.
Go ahead, Bert.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, if we're talking JKD itself, it was Guru Dan and Richard Bustillo primarily, because what's interesting is they have a very different sort of personalities and the way they do things, but
right.
You get the similar material relayed in different ways. And then my third big influence was Sifu Chris, and then Tim Tackett and Larry Hartzell, very, very big influences on me as well. And then, of course, I read and study and find whatever I can from other sources out there. We have some good people under Ted Wong that are putting out a lot of material, and there's so much good to understand. And, of course, all of Bruce Lee's writings also. So in the JKD world, that's what I would say is the main thing. And then I have all these other arts that have been very just profoundly influential, but if we're talking JKD, those are the main people.
Chris?
Well, obviously first and foremost would be Dan, Sifu Dan, because as I said, while Bruce Lee may have ignited my flame of passion for martial arts, it was Dan who nurtured it and helped me understand how to develop that. And then at the time too, all of those, for want of a better term, my JKD big brothers, Richard Bustillo, yes, he and Dan, at the time, Dan was still more of the senior. They became more partner-like at the Kali Academy, but they were wonderful because they were like yin and yang, they just fit together so well. So yeah, having Bustillo, Bob Bremer, Daniel Lee, Jerry Poteet, all of those guys were my big brothers, and I spent an inordinate amount of time with some of these people. Jerry, my wife, girlfriend at the time, Dan and his first wife Sue, myself and Leslie, we would go over to Jerry's on weekends for barbecues and make equipment and train outside. Daniel Lee, as I said, all of them taught me different things. All of them had slightly different takes on it. And that's for the physical part. I was fortunate enough to become friends with Linda Lee, and she just openly shared Bruce and his attitudes and his approaches for that. And then, as you said, you've met other people. Yeah, I've met so many great martial artists through Dan, and through other people.
Right.
We were talking about different arts. Hickson Gracie, I had the opportunity of meeting with him and training him a very little bit, but his school was not that far from mine, so I used to go and watch him teach because I love to watch great teachers, and so seeing all of these type of people and their approaches to it. So again, all of those. I mean, there's just so many that you couldn't name them. We've talked before on the philosophical side of it, if you will. John Little, because he was up here in Boise for several years, we used to have these mammoth 4 or 5 hour either watching stuff, or he was working on some of the boosting material. So we would just do mammoth discussions, and I really think that he gets it more than a huge number of the people out there. So again, and my juniors too, and my juniors, I mean my own students. I've grown so much from my own students. But if you're going back, you're talking about all of those early years would be Dan, Richard, Bob, Jerry, Daniel Lee, great guys.
Yeah. This might be a tough one for you to answer, Chris, but who from the old days do you keep in touch with? And the reason why I say it's tough is because all your JKD, not all, but a lot of your JKD big brothers are no longer with us.
Yeah, well, it's really hard to keep in contact with them. The phone bill is incredible, you know? They're like I said, they're almost all gone. I think other than Steve Golden, who's over in Oregon. I mean, thank God that we got to do this thing for Talkie, that Andy and Emery set up. That's been incredible. To meet these and knowing Talkie from way back, and unfortunately as Burt, we both know now, I mean, a lot of it's going with Talkie because of age and things like that. And they're not there anymore. Tackett and I, we talk, and he's my senior in terms of he was there before me and things like that, but they're all gone. They're all gone or going, and then it's in some ways it's kind of sad, and that's why I've always stressed that thing about, man, if you can go and meet these guys, the thing with Talkie is, if you get the opportunity to go and meet Dan, go and meet him, because when they're gone, they're gone.
Right.
And the land, the regrets, like the cemetery's filled with regrets, and I wish I would have met Dan. I wish I would have met Ted. If you get that opportunity, just do it.
Yeah, I saw somebody's comment yesterday or earlier today, and they were saying, yeah, I really want to meet Inosanto one of these days. And I'm thinking, what? What do you mean?
So available.
Yeah, what do you mean one of these days? Right? Burt, who do you stay in touch with?
Oh, of course, with Dan.
Yeah.
Yes, with Chris, absolutely. Yeah, but similar thing. There, a lot of people are gone that I did a lot of training with. I converse, send messages every once in a while to Tim Tackett, who was very influential. Also, he got to the point, like the intercepting. He made me understand exactly what intercepting was. And I know some people are going to go, oh, see, Guru Dan didn't teach you that. No, he taught it to me, but Tim Tackett was just able to say it in a certain way that, the light bulb goes on. Sometimes you have to hear something 20 times, then 21st time goes, oh, I get it. But, it's interesting that I actually keep in touch with some people, quite a few people that really influenced me, and that was my first real place I really started a class was at USC Kali Silat Club back in the mid 80s. And it's amazing that to this day I'm in touch with so many of the students from that time, and they've gone on to different things, and they're, amazingly successful group of people.
Yeah.
But it's just really wonderful. So thank you.
Well, just so you know, next Friday at this time, I'll be on with Richard Rycroft.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, you're gonna have a good time. He is really. I remember the day he walked in. He was sitting there and he was so intent watching. Then afterwards, he goes, "Yeah, I'd like to train." And wow, he became one of my training partners and demo partners. He's training many different arts. He's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, so I also, in an effort to make this as scintillating a conversation as possible, I actually Googled what are the questions that a top podcast host should ask, right? So, yeah, right? So Chris, you go first, right? Let's go back to like the mid 80s or so. How would your parents describe what you were doing for a living?
They were always very supportive, actually, because they initially, it was the usual stuff when I first started. But when I decided that that's what I was going to do, they were very supportive of it. It was the thing is, look, as long as you do what you love, that's the main thing. If you want to be a librarian, just be the best damn librarian you can be. It's totally up to you. You know, my dad came from a working class London background, so he thought it was great. They met, met Dan a number of times when we had our graduation ceremony for the Escrimador, where we did all the stuff, and they were there. They were there for that, and with Dan, and so they were just fully supportive on it.
Yeah.
Not one negative comment. So
did they ever but if somebody said to them, hey, what does your son do, right? Would they go, oh, he teaches karate?
No, because they understood that if they did that, they would die. Because I didn't do that, and they knew what Jeet Kune Do was, so they would usually say they teach martial arts, and then often then it's usually, oh, what kind, and then they would go the martial art that Bruce Lee developed and taught and things like that. But no, because I had done other martial arts previous to getting into Jeet Kune Do, so once I was in that, they knew exactly where I stood, and my feelings on it, and things like that.
Yeah, Burt, what would your mom and dad say?
Oh, almost exactly the opposite. So, I went to USC. I played on the baseball team. For those who are baseball aficionados, I played with Mark McGuire and Randy Johnson. We're teammates. And my dad wanted me to be a professional baseball player. I had no interest in baseball. By the time it got to there, I really didn't enjoy baseball. I was really interested in martial arts, but I thought I was going to go on to medical school. I was pre-med and such. So I got sick, which of course is a horrible thing until you look at it in hindsight and you go, wow, good thing it happened. That was really fortunate. So I got this ulcerative colitis. They didn't know what it was at the time, and for years they didn't know what I had. But I had some severe digestive problems. And I decided when I finished at USC that I was going to take a year off because they did know it was stress related somehow, that exacerbated it. And I decided, okay, I'm just going to take a year off and do what I want to do for 1 year, not do what everybody else wants me to do for 1 year, and then I'm going to go to medical school. And so it's been 30-some years since that. Didn't quite make it to medical school. But my parents, my dad wanted to be a baseball player. When I stopped that, he was very, let's just say, disappointed. And then when I decided I wasn't going to medical school right away, they were not happy about it. And then I kept going, especially because I'm living in a little camper trailer where I could actually touch both walls without moving at the same time. I mean, a tiny, tiny little thing you'd pull behind like a Volkswagen. And that was in a parking lot in a dog and cat hospital in downtown LA. And I was there for 5 years. And just interesting, my mentality, I didn't think I would ever get out of there. I didn't see any way out. It was just, that's what was going to be my life. But I was able to train because I traded that time for teaching. So the story is that after being in there 3 or 4 years, my mom calls me and we're talking, and she says, I was at this luncheon with some of my friends the other day, and one of my friends said, so how's your son doing? And I said, he's still doing that martial arts stuff. And my friend said, is he happy? And she said, well, yes, he's happy. I said, well, good for him. He's doing the right thing. He should be doing what makes him happy. And that changed her mind on it. And so eventually they came around. My dad, when I showed him a magazine that I was on the cover, that did it for him. So, it was quite, it wasn't good for several years though.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, Terry Valor from England.
Yeah, I know Terry.
Terry wanted to know, how long do you guys think you need to study an art to understand it? Not to qualify in rank or anything, but to understand the art. And then he wants the shortcut. What's the best method to do that? Right? So how long do you think you need to study it? And what's the best method to get to that point where you understand it?
Oh, that's easy. I'll just give you the JKD answer. It takes as long as it takes, and you do whatever you need to understand it. That's the simple one. The point is there is no timeline on it. There are some people. I mean, I saw people at the Kali Academy. They've been there for 10 years, and while they enjoyed it, I wouldn't say that they understood it. And then you get somebody who might come in, and within a year of training, they might not have the physical skills, very adept, but they got it. They understood it. So there is no timeline. And I know, like I said, I know Terry, but I just go back to that thing about, everybody wants everything in a nice, neat little package.
Right.
How long is it going to take for me to get that?
Right.
And then what's the best way? There are as many ways as there are people. In the same way, when we talk about teaching, what type of learner are you? Are you a visual? Are you a kinesthetic? Are you an auditory learner? Because we all have one, maybe two, but very rarely three. So how do you learn? And so that's what I said. I know people, they want these nice, neat little things, but it takes as long as it takes for you to get it. And some people, I hate to say it, will never get it. And other people, like I said, man, they're like, bang. I talk to people who aren't even in martial arts, maybe another field, music or art or something. And when we talk, you go, son of a gun, they understand it.
Right. Yeah.
So, sorry, Terry.
No, I don't think he'll be disappointed in that answer at all. Right. Burt, have you ever done anything to help students to understand it more quickly?
Yeah, I think that's what we all try to do, is we try to find ways that how can we not shortcut it, but lessen some of the time. And of course, here we go. People are going to get so sick of this. And I find when you actually do it, you better. For example, let's say you want to learn how to surf. So you take, for a year, you're out on the beach with that board in the sand, and you're learning how to stand up, and you this and that. And you have to get out there and actually surf before you understand it. Bruce Lee's dry land swimming analogy.
Right.
So that's what I do. I think the thing that somehow I hit upon is to progressively add progressive resistance and variable intensity, so people could get in and start experiencing the fight environment, because JKD is experiential. You need to experience it and not experience 17 different ways to, trap a tertiary barrier, but which is part of the art. I'm not saying don't ever do that. It's part of the art. But if you really want to understand the art, you need to get in and actually do the art. You can't understand anything unless you're actually doing it. That's my point. So I just make the sparring so people can get in, and we do a lot of different types of sparring. So that's what I would say. And on Chris's point, it often amazes me that people who do not train, have never trained at all, they totally understand the philosophy of JKD. I actually, a while back, I was at a local park up here in Kailua, and there's a custodian at the park. He takes care of the park, makes sure everything's good. And somehow we started talking, and martial arts came up, imagine that. And he starts going off on Bruce Lee's philosophy of fighting and how to do it. And he had never trained martial arts in his life, and he was spot on. He just understood what it was. And then you have people that are in my opinion, are teaching JKD, and they don't understand the root thing, using no way is way, having no limitation is limitation. So
yeah.
That's
let's talk physical training, because you just mentioned it. So Bruce Lee is famous for saying, if you want to learn to swim, you got to get into the water. So that means that you have to spar it, right? You got to apply it under fighting conditions. When do you do that? Day one?
Me?
Day
one.
Day 30? You do it day one. Chris, when do you do it?
Day one. What's that?
No, go ahead, Burt. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I do it day one, but that's my point is, if you do it safely, in a safe manner, you find ways to do the sparring safely, you can do it immediately. Because again, you're going to teach somebody to swim. It's good for them to have a feel of what they're going to do, get in the water. And I know Chris does this as well. He has his way of doing it as well. But again, fighting art. The first night I went to the Kali Academy, I was amazed at them kicking the shields, hitting the focus mitts, and then I saw them spar. Everybody sparred. Somebody got a bloody nose right in front of me, and it was, it was a fight gym. So the very first day, I don't care who it is, what their background, age, anything, they do open hand touch, where they just try to touch the top of the head, touch the hair, or the top of the head if there's no hair, and they're doing this. So now they're playing the game, and it sets them up for later. And now I know some of you are correct when you say, hey, sparring is not fighting. That is correct. It should be like that. In reality, there are people tackle you from the side, or they shove you first and all that. So we do scenarios, and we do it from there as well. But the main thing, I get them used to dealing with a resisting opponent, which is what they're going to deal with in reality, and then bring up the intensity as they're ready for it.
Okay. Chris, what's your approach?
I agree. Again, I think the two most important words, or besides sparring, that Burt used, are intelligently and safely. Because and again, I can only relate back to when I started. As I said, Dan being a PE coach, and this, I have to address something here just really quick, because it relates to that. And sparring was an essential thing. And a number of years ago, I dealt with an issue, and all I kept hearing from people who were contacting me, and it was related to myself, was, well, but you didn't spar, and you didn't spar. And I looked at it and I go, what was amazing is the people who were making these comments didn't start until after I'd already been there for 4 years. Okay?
Exactly.
And in the background, you sparred every single class. And you were sparring people like Daniel Lee and Richard Bustillo and Bob Bremer. So you sparred. And a lot of times it was, okay, you hit the equipment, good, now glove up, and you just went out and bang, 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 and you sparred. And then after a period of time, Dan comes in and he goes, look, I'm going to show you now that you don't have to do that all of the time. Okay? And he relates it again from a football analogy, that in the old days they used to scrimmage every day, and then when game day came, half of their team was out injured. So they started incorporating realistic drills. But again, you have to have most, because you have to go out and play the game. But it's how you do it. And I don't care who you are. Some people in different arts, even in other martial arts, they seem to wear their injuries like badges of honor. And I look at them as kind of like badges of ignorance on certain things, because it's like, oh, dude, look how I got cut with this knife. And that doesn't make sense. If Burt and I want to learn how to fight with knives, we're not going to go, hey, Burt, here's a 12-inch butcher knife, I'm going to get one, and we're just going to go and see what we learn from it. But you can take them to that level, and as Burt says, you tier up the training in the same way that you tier up. I tier up the philosophy in the same way I tier up the physical training. because you can't take a beginner and say, oh, dude, you got to be totally free and completely express yourself. They have no idea what you're talking about, you know? So the training, yeah, you can do it. I use a term with my students, deal with it. And sometimes I'll have them freelance spar, or sometimes I'll just give them one line, you know? And I have them spar and I go, you have one line to think about. That's it. Because then you have them go, but deal with it. And then I'm not going to tell you how. And then that's going to show me what they own versus what they do in a drill, because we're drilling it. So I might say, okay, so you got the lead straight. So maybe you're going to intercept it. Maybe you're going to use footwork to open the distance or move offline and evade. Maybe you're going to parry it and counter. Maybe you're going to slip. I'm not going to tell you. You're going to go do it. And then, you know, my guys who are more advanced, they go harder and harder. See? So yes, you have to go to that realm. Because, you know, I always say you can't take a person out in the middle of a lake in a canoe who's never swam in their life and kick them overboard and say, all right, just find out about it. Right? And the other part is that you cannot correct your flaws or your mistakes when you're sparring because you're in a pressure situation. So again, we go back to that yin yang. Yeah, you need that. And then you got to go back and you look and, you know, what mistakes, what flaws you have. Again, when you're on that baseline at Wimbledon facing off against Roger Federer on the other side, now is not the time to be thinking that my backhand's really kind of weak and my footwork sucks. You know, so you train it, but then you have to take it to what Burt's saying. You have to do that, and Dan was a master at teaching that, you know, and bringing that out. Yeah. So and again, I agree that you take it there, but the things are intelligently and safely. I don't need to have my nose broken to know I took a really good shot.
Right. What do you know about Inosanto's resources, right? In other words, so you mentioned being a PE teacher, right? So what do you know about his resources? And then for both of you, what resources have you used to perfect your craft as an instructor?
So what resources did Dan use?
Yeah, what do you know about his research? So like if he comes in and he says, okay, I'm going to show you guys that you don't have to bang hard on each other every day. Did that just come from sports, or do you know if it came from somewhere else?
Well, again, primarily because his background, his master's degree is in physical education. Okay. So again, a lot of it came from that. He had an extensive library. You know, again, when he lived in right around the corner from the school, or when he first started in Carson, he had a huge library on both sports training and obviously because of his, you know, growth and connection with Bruce on psychology and things of that nature. Right. So, you know, I think my take on it is that he drew primarily from that, you know, understanding it from a sportive perspective, that it's an athletic endeavor. Therefore, as with any other athletic endeavor, it follows similar principles. Right. And so he would use that. But again, going back to the same thing is, it doesn't matter how many of those drills you do. You know, if you're a football team, you still got to go out and play the game. Mm-hmm. You know, so that goes back to the sparring. Yeah. You know, on that.
So how did that show up in your approach, your resources?
Well, I guess it kind of went from, you know, the idea went from Bruce to Dan to filtered down to me, that I built my own library, built on martial art books, psychology books, philosophy books, studied those because Dan was always like, if you wanted to find out about something, find out about it. If you're interested in something, find out about it. You know, do your own research. For myself, I love to teach, so I'm always studying ways in which to maybe communicate better, or you know, the neuroscience of teaching, how we learn. That's for me is whatever. How can I communicate these ideas better, both in movement and verbally, and things like that? But
Yeah.
it's just, and it continually grows. I'm always buying books and looking at things. And well, now we have social media, so man, we can pop up and study people and things like that.
Well,
and then watching.
All I say about that is that it's revealed in your writing, which I hate. I don't hate it. I love it. I envy it to heck. Every time he writes something, I'm like, why can't I do this? God damn.
Well, you don't get to see the act, of it. As my friend and my writing mentor told me, writing is easy. All you have to sit there and look at that blank 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper until the drops of blood form on your forehead. And that's the other part that I love. Yeah. So can I communicate through writing and making sure that my writing mentor also told me, if you're not pissing off at least 20% of the people with what you're writing, you're not doing your job. So,
right.
As I said, you can do that. So, practice.
Burt.
I told you that when you told me.
What about your resources, Burt?
Mine, I want to say one thing about Guru Dan that Chris alluded to was just the athletics. He was an athlete. Actually, we were talking together. I was visiting LA a couple years ago, and we're discussing things, and he said, he just happened to say off the cuff, he goes, well, I don't know what exactly we were talking about the topic, but he just said, well, you understand because you are actually an athlete, and a lot of people think everything works all the time. And that was the thing. He was like, some people think you learn a technique and it's going to work 100% of the time. He goes, that's not true because you're an athlete, right? And anybody that plays sports, gosh, if there was a play in football that worked every single time, everybody would only do that play. But It doesn't work that way. And then my personal resources, I draw so much from my athletic background, but I must say I draw a lot from my jiu-jitsu training, not the technical portion. I mean, somehow developing the technique to be actually good, but just the training method and how you develop skill. And that can be in anything, whether it's baseball or jiu-jitsu. It's just so interesting going into jiu-jitsu, which is a sport, especially the non-striking area, and just doing that, doing things that are not certain things definitely you wouldn't want to do in a street self-defense situation, but then later bringing back the JKD idea into it, and altering it, but just the path. And I'm sure you can get the same thing out of going through, I don't know, maybe you want to take up painting and you really apply yourself for 10 years in painting, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself, and you're going to learn a lot about methodology and how to better teach it and absorb it better. So I think my athletic background and also the just all the training. But then on top of that, I read a lot of personal development because I clearly have a lot. I need a lot of development still. So I really go into that a lot because that helps me understand just human nature, and we're all trying to improve ourselves as we go on, and we all struggle with it.
What are you reading currently?
Currently, see, the way I do it is I generally have like 4 books, and I read some of this and I let it sink in. I read some of this, I let it sink in, and then I come back, which is kind of thing. I just finished. It's more of a pamphlet, and it was on how you perceive death. Great topic, but no, I think it's very pertinent. And it was just talking about actually death is a new birth. It was a very interesting perspective on the whole thing with great quotes from different people. And currently I'm reading, I'm going through the Tao of Jeet Kune Do with one of my students. We're reading also not Narnia. What is it? Yes, Narnia. Actually, the Chronicles of Narnia. We're going through all that. I mean, this is a very different sort of thing. So I always have different things. I also was reading what's his name, Darren Hardy's book, not the Power of One, but one where the whole thing is you have to focus on
one thing.
Yeah, the one thing.
The one thing. Yeah.
Yes. So,
okay.
Yeah, excellent. Right. It all.
That's
helps.
funny. I have that right here. Yeah.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah. I have that right here. Chris, what are you reading?
Again, same thing, different sources. I just finished one book by Eric Franklin called Conditioning for Dance, which is an incredible book. And he's a movement specialist. And I just got this other one. It's something in postural alignment that all relates to dance and musculature and opening the body up. Great stuff. He's got, webinars all over. So I'm reading those. I'm actually reading a book on Duke Kahanamoku, which is really cool, on his whole background that I sent off for. So that I just finished Optimal Learning, which is a book. Again, I don't know the guy's name right offhand, but he was a chess prodigy, and the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer was written about him. And then he got into martial arts, Tai Chi. So the first half of the book is kind of like his chess background, and then the second half is him pursuing the Tai Chi martial arts aspect and going to China for the pushing hands competitions, which he said, talks about being brutal and things like that. But again, very much crossover on those, and just like I said, just different things, whatever I have.
So, do you think that one of the issues that might plague Jeet Kune Do is that people are no longer doing their own research?
That may be part of it. I mean, every time you look around now, it seems like somebody wants to create their own style or their own system, and sometimes people will do it under the guise of, well, that's what Bruce Lee did. And, from my understanding and knowledge, you're talking of a man who spent thousands and thousands of hours researching and training and developing, and now it seems like somebody does 3 or 4 different seminars and reads 4 or 5 different books, and they want to create their own method.
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge difference there, and I kind of like that thing about research your own experience or research your experience. First of all, you have to have experiences, but it seems like so many people just want to jump to reject what's useless. They don't want to put the time in to find out why it's useless or what makes it, or not, I prefer the term not useful for them.
Yeah. They want to reject what they heard as useless.
I remember Dan saying, that's like me as a PE teacher. I show the kids in my class, we have a 6-week block on basketball. So, and I don't know basketball, so forgive me. But he's like, so I show him how to run down the court and do a reverse layup, and the kid runs down and bang, and flies off, and he goes, oh, that's really stupid. That's dumb. And he's like, no, it's not dumb because you can't do it. That's dumb if it violates things. So I don't know. Those people who want to are going to do the homework. They're going to spend the time looking at it. And then those who don't, there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah. Is there, Burt, can you think of a major issue plaguing Jeet Kune Do that if you could solve it, like you'd go after it immediately?
Yes. Yeah, okay. It seems to be my mission. I just wish, let's put it this way. Let's use a scientific method. Let's look at technique as theories. Then let's design a valid test to test that theory. Then, once we get results, see if maybe you have to alter something, and then do the test again. See if you're getting.
You sound like Dr. Anthony Fauci from the task force.
Should I put my mask on now? But really, it's that's the thing. You know, this whole coronavirus thing, I think it's very interesting. You can see how certain people just ignore the science itself. They don't have a belief or a confidence in science, and science is what really brought all our civilizations so far up where most people can eat every day. So that same thing in JKD, where often that term scientific street fighting comes out, but it's not scientific because you categorize each technique and you have these lists with techniques. That's not science. I should say it's a type of science. It's categorization, like in biology, the genus, phyla, and all this. But let's actually go and try it out. Let's go into the lab. Don't just listen to the lecture, take your notes, and think you know it. You got to go into the lab, like Chris was saying. That's all I would say is, and then be open. If you're a scientist, the first thing you need to say is, I don't know. Why would you do a test if you knew? You just say, I don't know. Let me do a valid test where I don't put my own biases in it, and let's see what happens. And when I get a result, let's have other people do the test on their own and see if they get similar results. So I just wish people would actually try it out, because the reason I say that is because I think that's what Bruce Lee went through. He was training in Wing Chun, then he did modified Wing Chun, then he had some fights, and then he had a fight that really changed the way he was looking at things. And then he got to that point where he went through, again, you don't have to do it like this, but Guru Dan found these naval headgear, and he bought 6 naval headgear. He gave 2 to Bruce Lee. Now they're wearing chest protectors and all, and they're going all out for a certain period of time. They were sparring all out, and that's when Bruce Lee said he started calling it Jeet Kune Do. That's what he said in a letter to, I think it was Wong Sheng Liang that he did that. But the point being, we go through that actual situation so you get to experience it, and I think it would be a lot more understanding of not, does this technique work and all that, when does it work?
Yeah. Chris, can you riff off of what Burt just said and tell me why I don't have to move to Hong Kong and study Wing Chun and then move to Seattle, right, and train there for a little bit, and then move to Oakland, and then move to Los Angeles, and then ultimately go to my backyard? Tell me why I don't have to do that in order to get this.
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is go back and look at, where did Bruce get it? He got it from himself. He did the outside research, but then he went back inside, and again, how is this going to work for me? The self-knowledge, the self-awareness, how can I analyze this? How can I develop what we refer to in Jeet Kune Do as the educated eye and discerning mind? Okay, how am I going to do that? Why do you need to go there? Again, that's where I take issue with, as I said, some people who, I've read different things or seen online where people will make comments about, well, A, Bruce Lee never learned the entire Wing Chun system, and B, if he did, he never would have created Jeet Kune Do. And this is not to riff on Wing Chun. It is a great art. I've met phenomenal guys through Dan, Francis Fong, Wong Sheng Liang, Hawkins Chun, Williams Chun. But when we're talking about what is, and these people make these kind of comments, well, the first is unnecessary, and the second is kind of ludicrous to me. Because, I don't, if we look at it from history, and again, I sometimes when I'm dealing with these people, I'll use Dan's own analogies that he used to use on me, coming up on them, because they're like, well, you've got to go and you've got to learn this, and you've got to learn all of these jump on this and jump on that, and the Wing Chun this, and Dan used to go, so that's like saying that in order to understand modern SEAL warfare, We got to put on red coats, carry a musket, and walk across open fields in a great long straight line. Well, no, we don't. We might understand that, we might study it, but we don't need to go back to that. You know, there are reasons why Bruce Lee made these changes in his structure, in his arts, and they're not to do with the fact that he had one leg shorter than the other, or he was, you know, short-sighted or what. The idea is to understand what changes, what was he looking for, why did he make these changes, what was the direction he was going. You know, again, part of what was stressed to me growing up was, you know, you look for the common denominators in arts. These are the strings that go through all different arts. So if you were to even compare when Bruce was talking about Wing Chun and fencing and boxing, you know, they all have lateral parries, they all have vertical parries, they all have scooping parries. You know, what are the things that run across these arts? You know, I did an article years ago about JKD and Kali, because Kali has perfect examples of the 5 ways of attack. So, you know, did they get that from JKD? Hell no, they had it. You know, what Bruce was looking for was these common denominators, and then how they would work for him and for what he wants to do.
Right.
So you to tell me that in order for me to understand Jeet Kune Do, I got to go back and learn the 108 movements of the Mukjang? No. If I choose to learn them, and again, I'm not saying it's wrong or it's bad. If that's what you want to do, that's great. I give you kudos for doing it. But when you publicly put out that in order to understand Jeet Kune Do, you need to go back and learn the 108 movements on the Wing Chun dummy, and sorry, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Agreed, 100%.
Okay, I just noticed. I think we've been at this for a while, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. And I also don't want to mess it up in the last few minutes, because, you know, I was scared, Chris. What? I don't think I asked you this. This was something else. Yeah, I don't think I asked you this. Has this whole COVID-19 thing, has it changed your thinking about what you do and or what you will do going forward?
Are you asking me?
Both of you.
Okay. Well, okay. I want to answer that, but can I go back to when we were talking earlier, and Burt was talking about the situations in JKD and you know what's going on. You know, and Burt was there, so he knows, and that's why I said that's why I love it. When we did this art, okay, from the backyard to the Poly Academy to Marina Del Rey School, I wasn't involved with the IMB school as much. I know it was there, but you know what? Everybody did this art for the love of doing it, okay? Not for the idea of getting certificates, you know, becoming instructors and immediately turning around and making instructors of their own. I got a certificate from Dan with hours trained of like 600 hours in 1976. I started in 73. I didn't get my certificate, my full instructor certificate. It was 9 years later, and it was tossed to me by Buddy Thompson out of a desk drawer at the Collie Academy. But I think the person maybe, you know, please help me out. We did this because we loved it. You know, the JKD, the Filipino arts too. I did it not because I wanted to, you know, get this level or that level. I just did it because it was just so damn cool not to do it. And so I think if I would say one thing to people is, man, you know, do it. If we could get back to that, just doing it for the sheer love of doing it. And I think that goes for any art. You know, as Burt said, if I'm working with my grappling guys here that I have that teaches my class, I just want to do it for the sake of doing it. I don't care about, anything else. I love it. So, Bert, what do you think, eh?
I mean, absolutely. I know when I started, for years and years of training, I didn't even know there was a certificate or anything. I had no idea. It was just totally a love, right?
Yeah.
Just love of training and the art and self-improvement. You can just feel how you're becoming a better person. So I'm turning off this notification here. Yeah. I mean, it was just all about training and all. And there are some people who are certificate collectors, and they do that maybe for business purposes and all. I would just say, for me personally, if somebody goes through my programs, I mean, they have to do some work to get through that program, and they have to really demonstrate some serious skills and all. But that's another subject. You were talking about the COVID thing, how we're changing. So I'm going to switch all my classes to Chinese long pole for the street, so that we can be at about 12-foot distance from each other at all times. No, but seriously, for me, for anybody in martial arts, it's an issue. It's going to see when are people actually comfortable coming back. Chris lives in Boise, and like you were saying, it's population is smaller, open spaces and such, so maybe it's a different impact there. We've been very fortunate here in Hawaii where we don't have a lot of cases, and it's sunny, and that seems like makes a difference. But grappling and have somebody sweating on your face, it's probably not the best thing if you're thinking about avoiding transmission.
Right.
And I agree with that. That's the thing. Again, going back to that. I mean, I'm still moving forward, but just be sensible. I mean, be sensible. Make sure things are clean. Make sure what's going on. Don't have people coming in, with a gi that hasn't been washed in a week, or their gloves, or shoes marching through the dirt. Just pay attention to the stuff. Very, very much so. Yeah, Bert, see in Hawaii they're doing the long pole. Up here, everybody's practicing because it's Idaho, so we practice. So many people now practice the Chinese art of Ching Ching Pow. Because they just go wow. It's sort of like there are a lot of guns up here. So let me come. Not everybody's that way, but again, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Okay, so let's start this up. In 1992, my 9th year with Inosanto, my 3rd year of bringing him in for seminars, at some point during the 1992 seminar, he leans over to me and he says, "Wow, Dwight, your levels really come up." And that was a great martial art moment throughout my journey. So Derek John Miller wanted me to ask you too, what's been a great martial art moment throughout your journey?
Go ahead, Bert.
Well, I'll say something similar. I was just training. So I started the Kali Academy, and then I went to college. So I just trained during the summers, and I trained on my own at college. But I didn't know what I was doing. I did a lot of reading. But then after I started training full time, and I would go to every single one of Rudan's classes. Wherever he taught, I was at every single class. And one day he came up to me before a class, and he just said, "Hey, I have a question for you. Are you going to keep doing this?" And I said, "Yes." And it's right. The class is just about to start. I said, "Oh, yes." He goes, "Oh, okay. Yeah, you're an apprentice instructor now." And he walks away. He goes, "Okay, let's start class." And I was, what? I was shocked. I had not even a thought of it. It wasn't even on my mind like a goal, nothing. It just, that was shocking to me. So great moment.
Chris.
Yeah, it's funny because when Burt said
47 years, you can't remember anything.
What's that?
47
right.
years.
That's right. Thank you for that, Dwight. I will remember that.
Exactly.
But what Burt was saying, like about that, to me, and this is not my moment, but what was so cool was because I was just already part of the JKD class, but I would know because Dan would be there, and some of my guys who became instructors under me, and they'd be working out, and there was no big elaborate ceremony or anything. The guy come over and he goes, "Hey, Dan just came over," and he put his arm on my shoulder and he goes, "Hey, Randy, I know you're phase 3. Well, as of Tuesday, you're phase 4 now." And then he just walk away, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, that's like the most magnificent thing in their life." So for me, when the best one was when I first met Dan, and then he invited me to join the school. But there was another time when I was over at his house, and we were going through stuff, and he was always pulling notes from Bruce out or different things out because he had these file cabinets and all over the place and books and then different stuff. And then we were just doing stuff, and then I saw him writing something. He just turned around and he wrote something down, and he turned around and he goes, "Here. This, I want you to have this." And I looked down, and it's, you see, I put it in my book. It was one of the original Chinatown Jung Fun Kung Fu Institute membership codes. Wow. And it was signed by Bruce, and he had signed above it under like the instructor. And he put my name, and he had put like the date that I joined and stuff like that. And he goes, "This is for you." And I mean, like I said, it was just like so overwhelmed, but it was done just that way. Nothing elaborate, and that was always the thing. Everything was understated, and so when it was, as Burt said, people just go, "Wow, yeah." So there were so many, and it's been so long, Dwight, that I can't remember. So.
Yeah, but I'm just teasing about that, and I'm goddamn happy that you have kept records, because Burt, have you noticed? He'll put up a post, and then the first thing it says is that it's a repost, right? So it's something like from 10 years ago. And I wanted to ask you about that, Chris, because there was one in particular that it said, "I wrote this 10 years ago, but I'm putting it out again because it's still relevant." Does that piss you off, or does it make you feel differently than pissed off that 10 years later you got to say it again?
Well, the good stuff doesn't piss me off, because the good stuff is still as relevant now as back then.
Okay.
What does piss me off is that in so many ways, it's like, how many times do you have to keep saying this? It's Bruce Lee passed away coming up 47 years ago or now, and we still have. I'm still reading posts where people are arguing over the position that you're supposed to put your foot in the Baijong position, the rear heel, and the angle of your foot, or where your hand is supposed to be, or so. And I also understand that there's a whole new audience that are reading it that may not have read it before. But sometimes because people are just dense. Some people are just dense, and we go back to, they just don't get it, So there's a lot of stuff like it does piss me off, because having been there and seen the stuff and reading negative stuff written about a number of different people. And as somebody who was there and knew those people from both sides, or from all different camps, no camp in particular, it does. So I will repost it, because people need to be reminded of certain stuff.
Okay. What I realized in prepping for this and reading up on you guys is that a lot of people sent me questions that were based on this. They wanted you to talk about other people. They didn't want you to talk about ideas. And it put me in mind of the quote that small minds discuss people, great minds discuss ideas.
I would like to address that. There's some people I would like to talk about. Guru Dan, awesome. Thank you so much. Chris, thank you so much for all you've done. Thank you, Richard Bastello, Larry Hartzell, etc., etc. I mean, yeah, we can discuss people, but why would you want to pick at people that you don't understand where they're coming from, or they have a different path than you? It's like, wow, just it reminds me of that old saying, when you point your finger at somebody, you got 3 fingers pointed back at you. So, take care of yourself, work on yourself. Because I figure this way I look at it, I'm not perfect. So if someone else is not perfect, okay, I'm not perfect either. And if I somehow achieved perfection, I probably wouldn't be talking about other people.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think what pisses me off most is that so much of that are people that came down the road years later and they're regurgitating something that, when I sent you that note the other day, it's something to do with a James Taylor song where someone said something about something that someone said something about someone. That's what it's like when I listen to these guys. So it's like I said, having been there at the time, and I'm like, that's not what happened, or that's not what Dan or Richard or whoever said, but it's whatever they've been fed for the number of years. So again, it's versus nobody's perfect. No, we all have shadow qualities that we don't like people to know about. Everybody's made mistakes. Okay, that's fine. But why are you going to sit there and he said this and he said this about that person and he doesn't know this and
Right.
I hear that all the time. I've heard that for so many years, relation to Sifu Dan, and this guy versus this and Dan this and the movements and I'm like, well, first of all, one thing. First, don't confuse Dan Inosanto's personal martial evolution with the evolution of Jeet Kune Do. And 2, when I started training with Dan, let me tell you, if he didn't want you to touch him, you couldn't touch him. His footwork, his movements were so damn fast. You see those pictures in that Karate Illustrated magazine, JKD's First Powerful Deceptive, where he's wearing the t-shirt and the sweatpants. That's how he used to train, and that's how he used to teach. And the man has mad skill. So when I hear people, make stupid ass comments about stuff, I'm not going to be nice about it. I've been around too long to hear it, and I find it insulting that they do that. And then I find it insulting that other people would talk or belittle another person. I've heard names. I've heard people belittle Ted Wong, who had an immense amount of knowledge. Why would you do that? Why would you not want to understand what he has to offer? So it goes back to what you said: little minds, big minds. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, this is definitely the last thing. It's another thing. It's another thing that you both have in common. So anybody who didn't come early, I tried to list off things that I realized got in common. And to me, it shows that you are capable of dissolving the ego. So Burt, in your case, it was those infamous unique publications, JKD concept or whatever. And then Chris, it was where you said, when I wrote the textbook, I talked about flowing from art to art, and I no longer think that way. And I've always respected, even before all of that, I've respected the two of you. But I have to tell you that I really admire both of you for having the courage to say, maybe I was wrong.
Well, and that's what Burt said about the science. I don't know, I'm not, maybe there is another way, whatever, that was my personal growth. We've all grown. I've grown. One of the things that Dan used to impress so much was the fact that if you aren't doing your thing, if you aren't developing yourself, if you are not evolving, that's your fault.
Yeah.
That's not his fault as a teacher. That's your fault. So the point you were talking about was at that time, that was sort of the prevalent thought of, well, this is a savate, for one of them, this is a savate kick, this is a Thai elbow. And then it comes to the point, well, wait a second, if we're looking at Jeet Kune Do and it's about expressing the human body, then if I'm expressing myself, then the whole idea was to transcend style and just do away with those names. And then you go back to, it's just an elbow, it's just a knee. Where you drew it from, and that goes back to, if you understand it and you can use it, it belongs to nobody, it's yours. Yeah, the kick becomes mine.
Right.
So that was just going back and looking at that whole idea about Jeet Kune Do, and well, can you just forget about the names of it and look in terms of science, look in terms of body mechanics, kinesiology, because that's what Bruce did. So.
Yeah.
Well, personally,
and it's there in your books. Go ahead, Bert.
I was just going to say, personally, I have never made a mistake, so I don't know what you're talking. No,
you did once, but you were wrong. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. That's what my dad used to say. Because I was wrong once. I thought I was wrong, but I was really right. So, actually, one of my major misunderstandings was I thought Jeet Kune Do was just expressing what yourself and different arts and putting it together. That was one of my major misconceptions, and then I realized that, oh, I see. There was Jun Fan Gung Fu. There's Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do, was what Bruce Lee did himself, and it's an art in itself, and it has principles and techniques, and it's really amazing. And then, at least the way I look at it, then you can take it from there, or some of my instructors would say, then you take that and you do your own thing, which is your quote JKD. But again, I just like to make sure it's tested, so it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to do this thing, but it never works on anybody. I'm always looking to see where my errors are and what I can improve. So, that also gives me a little compassion for sometimes when people are saying certain things. I go, oh, gosh, I used to think like that.
Right.
So, they'll come around or whatever. So, it's this journey we're on. We're on a journey.
Well, the name Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do, right? Okay. Because on the textbook there's a line between the two of them, because we were just talking about Jun Fan Gung Fu and as it relates to Jeet Kune Do.
Mm-hmm.
When the what became the nucleus began, and the idea of the whole purpose of that was simply to share with people the most accurate, clear picture of, as Bert was saying, what Bruce was doing in his life, what he was training on, what he was developing. And we were coming up with names for ideas at one of the meetings, and then it was Shannon who put forth the idea, well, why don't we just refer to it as Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do? Because that brings both of these things together. They're as these evolutionary periods together as one, and that was the sole purpose for that. Was just to, as we were talking about, this was what Bruce Lee was doing during his lifetime. This is what he was researching there. anything else, like I said, you've got Jeet Kune Do, whatever. So I think it's very important to clarify how that term came into existence. We put the slash in there because at the time there was still this feeling at the schools, like you probably remember, Burt, but you didn't go out and wear your school T-shirt out.
No.
You weren't supposed to do that. No, that was a big no-no. You wore to the school and trained, and other than that, everything was low key. And so the thing about Jeet Kune Do and even Dan using the name, we were standing out at the Marina School, out in the parking lot one day talking about it, and there was myself, Tim Tackett, Cass, I think Alfonso Tamez, and Dan was there, and we were talking about the name, and he turned, or he was there with us, and he goes, look, I made a promise to Bruce not to use the name Jeet Kune Do, and what the actual promise was that, Bruce said to Dan, look, you could make a lot of money. I know you could probably make a lot of money off of teaching Jeet Kune Do, but I'd be disappointed in you if you did. So that's what Dan bases his line of attitude on. But we're standing out in the parking lot, and we were talking about this name and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's right around when the second book came out, and he says, look, guys, I made this promise to Bruce. You guys didn't. You should use the name, and you can use the name. And part of it was because there were all of these people around the world. Suddenly, Club Jeet Kune Do opened up in some place, and Jeet Kune Do schools here. And he's like, yeah, I made this promise to Bruce. You didn't. So you have freedom to use the name, and you should use the name because you are the people qualified. So, again, those are historical facts that exist that I feel people need to understand. And yeah, we can argue that it's the name, but cool, all right, but at least understand it.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. Hey, I'm almost out of battery.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's a good segue, right? Okay. So, gentlemen, thank you from the bottom of my heart for agreeing to do this. Mr. Kent, for this dialogue, I did something different. I usually have the full screen on my computer where I can see the comments as they come in. I closed it. I have not seen a single comment.
Good.
I advise you
not to look.
Oh yeah, not to look at the comment, right?
True.
All right. Listen, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
Well, again, thank you, and Burt. It was, like I said, it was great reconnecting back in Seattle, and we talked about. I think we both had the feeling of we felt that JKD needs to just kind of be kicked back to where it belongs. So we talked about it, and I'm glad that we connected on that.
Thank you.
Well,
I appreciate it so much.
If I can help in any way, just let me know.
Okay, just send me your comments, and I won't read them.
All right, guys. Okay. All right. Have a good one. Thanks again.
All right. Take care, man. All right.
All right. Take care. Bye.
I think I'm leaving, yes.
Yeah, you're leaving.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks, Dwight.
All right. My pleasure, man. I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the elements I'd like to show is what is known as hand immobilization attack. And it is simply one of the 5 ways of attack that exists in Jeet Kune Do. But one of the things that kind of really annoys me is every time you see it in a magazine, you always see it from a reference point position. And that's all anybody ever does. So you'll see a technique, what we call Pak Sao, Lop Sao. And we'll start from here, and then you'll see I'll go Pak, and then he'll cross, and then I'll go Lop, and then I'll go, and I'll hit like this. Okay, so everybody automatically assumes that, oh, if we're going to get in a fight, that this is what you do. You start from here. And as I said, nobody fights like going, okay, Steve, you've upset me in the Shaolin Temple, let's fight. And then we go from here. This is simply the beginning point that helps teach you the economical motion and non-telegraphic motion of your trap, so you don't do stuff like this and pull back. However, combatively, rarely, if ever, will it start from this position. So that's the start. So if we look at what we say from a reference point, we go Pak Sao, Lop Sao, and then we trap. Okay? And remember, we're staying on hand immobilization. But that's only the beginning point. If I'm dealing with an opponent, and this opponent, when he's moving around me, keeps his hand locked in the same position all of the time, and I'm moving, then I jump that. And then when I get that energy, I trap and hit. So if you see here, I'm going from an attached position, learning it, to now I'm going from here's where I'm going to use it, and I'm moving with this person, and I trap, and then I deal with that second barrier. Okay? But then that same trapping action can also be used as a counter or an interception against the opponent's attack. So if I was here, and let me just talk for, if I was here and Steve were to throw a punch at me out here, I can intercept many different ways. But what I'm doing here is the moment he starts that punch, I shut it down with a trap, and then I lop it. See? So if I was here and Steve was to take it back again, if he were to punch, bang, I trap it, and then I just shut it down right here. So this is the beginning stage. Stage 1, if you want to call it that. Your trapping action starts from the nucleus outward. So if you see, we're going from a position of learning the motion to now how can I use the trap as an attacking action to shut this person's hand down from an unattached position here, okay, to how do I use it as a counter when he punches, I shut it down, and then I trap the second action. And that's it.
Functional trapping. It's not fancy, but if you understand where to do the trapping, you can really use it to your advantage. For example, first thing we look at, Pak Sao. A great use for Pak Sao is when the person's coming in and you Pak Sao them as they come in with a jab. Why does it work well? Because generally, if he throws a jab, I parry and then I come back, and then he's going to block that after. There's a natural rhythm. He throws a punch, then he looks for the defense. Throws a punch, and he's looking to be on defense. So one more time, bang, and here. Okay, so the rhythm is what? 1, 2, right? 1, 2. If you use the Pak Sao, you step in while he's jabbing. Now, just real quick, if you look at the head movement videos, you'll see as that punch comes out, sometimes we slip and hit at the same time. Slip and hit. I land my blow when his is at full extension, when his would probably hit. So that timing is as he would actually make contact, I'm making contact. Okay, but he might have his other hand up, and he's ready for that too if he's done a lot of boxing. But you do the Pak Sao well, you make contact to him while his hand's on the way out. That's a different timing. He may be ready to go punch and then block. He may be ready to go punch and kind of deflect something as his arm is an extension, but as he's starting to go out, it's not even all the way out. It's shocking to people to be intercepted at that time. So for example, he throws that jab and you're in the middle of it. That's the beauty. It's like your punch is there before
he thought it could get there. So one more time, you go here, and you just come in. So slow motion, really slow. As it comes in, I just have to be ready with my hand. I'm just gonna really aggressively knock this down, and it's not 1, 2. I'm stepping in and hitting at the same time right there as he walks in. So he steps in, I step in at the same time, and that's how you get your hit. Here are a couple examples in sparring. You'll notice that we're using the cage, full head with a cage, because with the MMA gloves you can go hard and fast and not totally bust up your partner. So that's why we're using these.